January 17, 1943. The Eastern Front was shrouded in a biting frost. A thin veil of smoke hovered over the cratered fields outside a small Soviet village, where the earth had been churned into a muddy battlefield by weeks of relentless combat. Morning light struggled through the gray sky, casting long shadows over abandoned equipment and frozen footprints. Somewhere in the distance, the guttural growl of Panzer engines cut through the cold air, echoing off the skeletal remains of forest lines. At the edge of a shallow foxhole, a young Soviet gunner crouched behind his anti-tank gun, his breath visible in quick, nervous clouds. Fingers numbed by the winter chill rested lightly on the trigger, eyes scanning the horizon where silhouettes of German tanks crept forward with deadly precision. He had no illusions about the threat. These machines could crush infantry and armor alike. Yet today, he held a different kind of power. A single, well-timed decoy round rested in his weapon, a small gambit with the potential to turn the enemy's confidence into vulnerability. The moment of choice hung in the frozen air, tense and fragile. This day would test ingenuity against the iron might of the Panzer. By early 1943, the Eastern Front had become a frozen crucible of attrition. The German Wehrmacht, still reeling from the disaster at Stalingrad, sought to regain momentum through armored offensives across the southern Soviet territories. Panzer divisions, their steel hulks gleaming even in the dim winter light, were deployed to punch through defensive lines, crush Soviet positions, and restore the aura of invincibility that had carried them across Europe. Yet, the Soviets had adapted. Months of brutal combat had forced commanders to rethink how infantry and anti-tank units could confront these heavily armored adversaries. The anti-tank gun, once a simple defensive tool, had evolved into a lifeline for Soviet troops. These weapons, often dug into frozen soil or camouflaged along hedgerows, were designed to exploit the one consistent weakness of German armor, the thin side and rear plating of the Panzer IV and its contemporaries. Soldiers trained relentlessly, not only in accuracy but in timing and psychological tactics. Every gunner knew that hitting the front armor was often futile, yet finding the right angle at the right moment could turn the tide of a skirmish. Meanwhile, German tank crews advanced with mechanical confidence, unaware that their dominance could be undermined by ingenuity and patience. They relied on frontal assaults, their doctrine emphasizing speed and shock, often underestimating the cunning of individual defenders. The battlefield itself, cratered fields, shattered trees, and frozen mud, created opportunities for small units to stage ambushes. Camouflage, sound, and the rhythm of enemy movement became as critical as ammunition. Into this calculated environment stepped the young gunner, aware of both the technical and human variables at play. His position was modest, almost invisible against the bleak terrain, yet it offered a vantage point over the approaching Panzer column. He understood that victory would not come from raw firepower alone, but from anticipation, observation, and the careful orchestration of fear and deception. In the hours before the attack, silence fell across the front line, broken only by distant artillery booms. Each breath, each movement carried weight, as though the land itself held its breath in anticipation of what was to come. The Soviets had studied German armor closely. Field intelligence, captured tanks, and battlefield reports revealed a clear pattern. The Panzer's formidable frontal armor could shrug off most anti-tank rounds, but their sides and rear remained comparatively thin. Skilled gunners knew that to survive, they had to lure the enemy into presenting these vulnerabilities. It was not enough to wait. Timing and deception became tools as essential as the gun itself. Anti-tank crews trained for months in harsh conditions, learning to calculate angles, estimate distances, and exploit the Panzer's predictable maneuvers. Soldiers drilled under biting winds, practicing the release of dummy rounds, the use of decoys, and even false retreats to manipulate German perceptions. The idea was simple yet perilous. Trick the enemy into exposing the very armor that could be penetrated. Mistakes were deadly, and success demanded absolute composure under pressure. The battlefield was more than just terrain. It was a dynamic chessboard. Craters became cover, burned-out vehicles became obstacles, and frozen mud slowed the advance of even the heaviest tanks. Soviet commanders placed gunners in positions that maximized observation while minimizing exposure, sometimes on the flanks of anticipated routes or in concealed depressions just off the main track. Coordination with infantry, spotters, and nearby artillery units was crucial, ensuring that a single well-placed shot could cascade into confusion among the enemy. Meanwhile, German tank crews, confident in their armor and superior optics, often overlooked subtle cues of an ambush. They relied on speed and momentum, trusting the Panzer's frontal armor to withstand retaliation. This overconfidence created opportunities. Every pause, every adjustment of a turret, every hesitation became a potential opening. The young gunner at his foxhole had internalized these lessons. He watched the column, noting engine sounds, the angle of approach, and the spacing between tanks. In this delicate balance of observation and anticipation, the line between life and death narrowed. The frozen battlefield, silent but charged with tension, awaited the moment when human ingenuity would meet mechanized might. The stage was set, and the first act of the day's confrontation was about to unfold. From the gunner's perspective, the battlefield was both intimate and terrifying. Every sound carried meaning: the low growl of approaching Panzers, the crunch of frozen mud under steel tracks, the distant echo of artillery. He could feel the vibrations through the ground, a tactile warning that the enemy was drawing closer. Fear was constant, yet it sharpened his focus. In those moments, human intuition and training merged, guiding him to make decisions that could determine life or death, not only for himself but for the soldiers around him. Tactically, the decoy round was a stroke of calculated ingenuity. Its purpose was not to destroy but to provoke. By firing a harmless round or creating a visual distraction, the gunner could manipulate the enemy into exposing their side armor, essentially forcing the Panzer crews to make a predictable reaction. The success of such a tactic depended on timing, observation, and understanding of enemy psychology. One misjudged interval, one premature shot, could alert the enemy and render the ambush useless. Every movement had to be deliberate. Every false trigger had to seem real. From a technological standpoint, anti-tank weapons of 1943 had limitations that demanded creativity. Soviet 45mm and 76mm guns could penetrate side armor at close range, but frontal attacks were often futile. The decoy round leveraged this reality. By exploiting the mechanical weaknesses of the Panzer, the gunner transformed the battlefield into a calculated risk, using knowledge rather than brute force. Tanks, with their imposing size and armor, became vulnerable when maneuvered into the right position. Leadership and coordination also shaped the moment. Commanders relied on their gunners to execute precise ambushes, often granting a degree of autonomy on the front line. A single individual acting with discipline and cunning could disrupt an entire column. Orders were clear: observe, wait, and act when opportunity presented itself. Yet trust in the gunner's judgment required confidence born from experience and understanding of the enemy's tendencies. These angles, human courage, tactical foresight, technological understanding, and leadership trust, converged at the edge of the foxhole. The stage was set for a moment that would expose the Panzer's hidden vulnerabilities. From the enemy's perspective, German tank crews were trained to assume dominance. They relied on speed, armor, and aggressive tactics to suppress opposition. Yet in the frozen fields of 1943, overconfidence could be fatal. Crews scanning ahead often misread the battlefield, interpreting minor disturbances as inconsequential. When a decoy round ricocheted harmlessly near a lead Panzer, the subtle alarm it created was enough to draw the tank into a vulnerable angle, inadvertently exposing its side to a concealed gunner. The psychological impact was immediate. Hesitation, confusion, and miscalculated maneuvers opened doors the gunner could exploit. Morally, the decision to employ a decoy round reflected a bitter truth of frontline combat. Survival often demanded ingenuity over brute force, and soldiers adapted to maximize their effectiveness while minimizing risk. The gunner was not merely firing a weapon, he was manipulating perception, orchestrating a small theater of deception where human intellect challenged mechanized power. The act required discipline, patience, and an acute awareness of consequences. Each calculated move carried ethical weight, for error could result in death on both sides. Technology continued to dictate outcomes. While Panzers boasted formidable armor, their design inherently favored frontal confrontation. Anti-tank gunners understood these limitations and relied on both the environment and the enemy's assumptions. Camouflaged positions, frozen terrain, and decoy tactics multiplied the effectiveness of the weapon beyond its raw penetration capability. A single, well-placed shot could neutralize a heavily armored threat. Finally, leadership and communication shaped the engagement from behind the lines. Soviet commanders emphasized decentralized initiative, trusting gunners to make split-second decisions based on situational awareness. Conversely, German command structures, though methodical, could not react to individual ingenuity on the fly. This imbalance, human creativity versus mechanical confidence, set the stage for the decisive moment. In these converging angles, the human element, tactical foresight, technological exploitation, enemy psychology, and leadership dynamics. The battlefield became a living puzzle. Every decision, every hesitation built toward the moment when the decoy round would reveal the Panzer's hidden weakness, transforming anticipation into action. The first Panzer emerged from the haze just past mid-morning. Its steel hull gleamed faintly under the gray sky, tracks crunching against frozen mud. The gunner held his breath, fingers steady on the trigger, eyes locked on the approaching machine. Around him, silence dominated, punctuated only by distant artillery and the intermittent clatter of German infantry. He had waited for this precise alignment, the moment when a single shot could dictate the course of engagement. He fired the decoy round. It struck harmlessly in the snow ahead of the lead tank, sending a puff of powder and dirt into the air. The Panzer commander instinctively adjusted his turret, bringing the side of the tank into a more offensive angle, unaware that he had just exposed the thinner armor of the vehicle. The movement was almost imperceptible, yet it was enough. The gunner's calculated patience, honed through months of training, turned observation into opportunity. A second shot followed, not destructive in itself, but a signal. The first Panzer's hesitation caused the column behind it to slow, engines growling and tracks shifting uncertainly on the uneven ground. German crews scanned for threats, unaware that the trap had already been set. From the foxhole, the gunner assessed angles, adjusting his aim with meticulous precision. Each tank's side plate now lay vulnerable, a target within the lethal range of his anti-tank gun. Moments stretched, the battlefield suspended in a fragile balance of sound and movement. The gunner's pulse matched the rhythm of approaching steel, yet his composure remained unshaken. One well-timed strike could cripple a vehicle, and a single hit could cause cascading chaos in the enemy ranks. It was a test of skill, timing, and nerve, the culmination of preparation meeting opportunity. As the column inched forward, unaware of the danger beneath them, the moment of confrontation loomed. The decoy round had done its work, turning mechanical confidence into vulnerability. Now, precision and courage would decide which force held the advantage. The second Panzer's side now presented itself like a target in the gunner's sights. He exhaled slowly and fired. The shell struck with a deafening impact, splintering the thin armor and igniting a small fire inside the vehicle. Crew members scrambled, hatches opening and closing in chaotic confusion. The lead Panzer, now immobilized, blocked the narrow approach, forcing following tanks to adjust their formation. The gunner did not pause. He tracked the third tank, calculating distance, angle, and velocity. Another precise round found its mark, striking the side armor and disabling the vehicle's engine. Smoke and flames twisted skyward, turning the once orderly German column into a scene of disarray. Panzer crews radioed frantic commands, attempting to regroup, but the decoy tactic had fractured their confidence. Hesitation replaced the usual precision of mechanized warfare. Nearby infantry reacted, some seeking cover, others advancing cautiously under the sudden confusion. The battlefield shifted from mechanical dominance to human calculation. From the foxhole, the gunner observed every movement, the jerking engines, the panicked turret, rotations, and the scrambling soldiers. Each reaction validated the plan, proving that ingenuity and timing could exploit the predictable tendencies of even the most formidable machines. Within minutes, two more Panzers faltered under careful targeting, their sides exposed by the chaos initiated by a single decoy round. Engines stuttered, tracks spun uselessly in frozen mud, and morale crumbled. German commanders attempted to reorganize, but the ripple effect of the initial deception had spread too quickly. The young gunner, small and hidden, had effectively dictated the flow of the engagement. By the time reinforcements approached, the Panzer column was already in disarray, several tanks disabled, others retreating or stalled. The decoy round, intended as a simple bait, had transformed the battlefield. What began as a calculated gamble became a decisive moment. The interplay of observation, timing, and mechanical knowledge had turned the enemy's strength into vulnerability, leaving the Soviets with a critical tactical advantage. The frozen field, once silent and expectant, now echoed with the aftermath of sudden chaos. Victory for the moment rested not on numbers, but on cunning, courage, and the precision of one determined gunner. By midday, the battlefield bore the marks of sudden violence. Smoke curled from the disabled Panzers, mingling with the frozen mist of the morning. The once imposing German column had been reduced to scattered hulks, engines silenced and turrets twisted at odd angles. Infantry, disoriented by the unexpected chaos, moved cautiously between wreckage, scanning for threats that no longer appeared in predictable patterns. Reports from the front line noted at least 4 tanks disabled within minutes, a disruption far beyond what a single gunner might normally achieve. The Soviet gunner, still in his foxhole, exhaled slowly. He observed the aftermath. With a mixture of relief and grim awareness, every shell fired, every calculated delay had contributed to the outcome. His comrades moved forward to secure positions, ensuring that the surviving German forces could not regroup. The frozen terrain, once a neutral stage, now bore the scars of ingenuity. Craters and tracks marked not only destruction, but the effectiveness of disciplined deception and tactical patience. Commanders on both sides began to reassess. For the Soviets, the engagement confirmed the importance of small unit initiative and tactical flexibility. Gunners could exploit enemy assumptions, turning mechanical superiority into vulnerability. Reports praised the clever use of the decoy round, emphasizing that even heavily armored formations could falter when confronted with careful observation and timing. German commanders, conversely, faced frustration and embarrassment. Confidence in frontal armor and shock tactics had failed to anticipate subtle manipulations of perception. The engagement demonstrated a clear gap. Well-trained, observant defenders could disrupt a Panzer advance with minimal resources. After-action reports emphasized caution in future advances, particularly across frozen or uneven terrain where ambushes could be staged. For soldiers on the ground, the encounter was more than a lesson in tactics. It was proof that individual initiative could shape the battlefield. One gunner, armed with patience and understanding of his enemy, had turned vulnerability into strength, and the echoes of that confrontation would linger in reports, strategy discussions, and the memory of those present. In the days following the engagement, the impact of the decoy round extended beyond the immediate battlefield. Soviet intelligence compiled reports detailing the disruption of the Panzer column, emphasizing how a single gunner had neutralized several armored vehicles without direct frontal confrontation. Commanders cited the incident in tactical briefings, highlighting it as an example of disciplined observation, patience, and the exploitation of enemy weaknesses. The engagement became a case study for anti-tank units, demonstrating that ingenuity could offset technological inferiority. The German response was one of both tactical adjustment and caution. Field reports noted the unexpected vulnerability of their side armor when confronted by well-positioned defenders. Commanders ordered additional reconnaissance, revised advance protocols, and stressed coordination between tanks and infantry to reduce the effectiveness of similar ambushes. Engineers and tacticians began considering armor reinforcement and turret maneuver strategies, acknowledging that a single clever opponent could threaten the cohesion of even the most formidable panzer formations. For the Soviet gunner, recognition came quietly but firmly. Unit commanders commended his decision-making and the precision with which he executed the ambush. In official records, his action was noted as exemplary, demonstrating how individual initiative could shape outcomes on a mechanized battlefield. Fellow soldiers spoke of the engagement with a mixture of awe and respect, understanding that their position had been secured not solely by numbers or firepower, but by cunning and courage under pressure. Casualties were significant for the German forces. Several crew members were killed or injured, and the psychological impact on surviving tank crews was immediate. Morale was shaken, and the lesson was clear. Mechanical dominance could be compromised by strategy and anticipation. The frozen field, once silent, remained scarred by tracks, craters, and the smoldering remains of armored vehicles. It stood as a testament to the fragile balance between technology and human ingenuity. In that stark landscape, the consequences of a single well-timed action reverberated far beyond the moment, shaping strategy, perception, and the understanding of armored warfare in the harsh realities of the Eastern Front. The story of a single gunner and his decoy round is more than a tactical anecdote. It is a testament to human ingenuity in the crucible of war. On a frozen field in 1943, amidst the roar of engines and the threat of death, one individual transformed careful observation, patience, and understanding of enemy weaknesses into decisive action. The Panzer, a symbol of mechanized dominance, proved vulnerable not only to firepower but to intellect, timing, and subtle deception. This moment underscores a broader truth about warfare. Technology alone does not guarantee victory. Armored vehicles, artillery, and superior numbers can shape the battlefield, but human creativity and adaptability often determine its outcome. The gunner's choice to employ a decoy round exemplifies the delicate interplay between anticipation and action, the balance of risk and reward, and the power of initiative in moments of extreme pressure. Historically, such encounters influenced tactics and strategy far beyond their immediate context. Commanders on both sides noted the importance of flexibility, reconnaissance, and understanding the opponent's psychology. The engagement reinforced that even heavily fortified forces could be disrupted by clever, calculated maneuvers, and that individual courage could ripple through the machinery of war, altering outcomes in ways that numbers alone could not. Yet beneath the tactical and strategic lessons lies a human story of fear, focus, and the weight of responsibility resting on a single pair of shoulders. The frozen battlefield, scarred by fire and steel, serves as a silent reminder that every decision in war carries consequences, for the living, for the fallen, and for the course of history itself. In the end, the decoy round was small, but its impact was profound. A reminder that ingenuity, courage, and careful observation can turn even the most formidable opponent into a momentary shadow, revealing vulnerabilities that might otherwise remain hidden forever.